Welcome everyone to Chart's free webinar series. Today we welcome Slim Chickens and Wisetail talking about keeping consistency and brand standards at an all-time high. Welcome everyone.
Thank you so much, Tara. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. I am Jamie. I am with Wisetail. We are Wisetail. We're really passionate about powering people through learning. If you don't know us, we view learning and understanding as the pathway to a stronger culture and really vital to building successful community companies or company communities. You know what I meant. Our team works really hard to further our mission of turning companies into communities through learning management systems. We are here today, as Tara said, with, I like to call them restaurant operational experts, Rachel, Tabitha, and Chris from Slim Chickens. You guys really are experts. In a moment, I'll let them introduce themselves, but for now, I just want to say we partnered up with them on this Chart webinar to showcase the results of their really impressive efforts to maintain brand consistency. It's all taken place through their learning and development initiatives, and it's impressive. They've really dialed in their training and their processes so much to establish themselves as fast casual restaurant leaders by keeping their guest experience and their brand standards high and at the forefront of everything they do. So to showcase their experience today, I am really excited to introduce Tabitha, Rachel, and Chris kind of at the end.
Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Chris Patterson. I am the Vice President of Training Development and Communications for Slims. We are a fast casual concept based in Fayetteville, Arkansas. As of Monday, we have 249 locations open. So growing very rapidly, which is fun and exciting all at the same time, and scary. So that's me in a brief nutshell, but I'm going to turn it over to Rachel and Tabitha. They'll handle the bulk of this, and I'll be back at Q&A time.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Rachel Mundwiller. I am Senior Manager of Content Development and Communications at Slim Chickens Restaurants. I have been with the brand for 5.5 years, and I started out opening up restaurants. So I have a very extensive knowledge of the brand, of where we were, as what our training offerings were. And with the help of Tabitha and Chris, we've been able in those 5.5 years to develop a pretty awesome learning plan for our team members. And we think it's pretty awesome. And we've received some awesome feedback on it as well. So I'm going to kick this over to Tabitha. She's going to start off some of the first couple of slides for us, and we'll move through this.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. My name is Tabitha Hudspeth. I am an instructional designer and content creator here at Slim Chickens. I've been with the brand for a little over a year and a half now, and I run our learning management system and get to partner with Rachel and Chris and work with them to really develop our training program and what that looks like. So we're here to talk today about keeping consistency and brand standards at an all-time high and how we do that. So like I said earlier, I manage our learning management system. As we kind of talked about a little bit, we use Wisetail for that. And so with that, one of the things that we started with when I came in with our learning management system is trying to make it a one-stop shop. If you have people in restaurants, you heard Chris talk about how many restaurants we have. We have almost 7,000 users in our system. I averaged it out yesterday, and we're actually adding about 380 users every week into that system because of those new restaurants that we're opening. And so with that, we wanted to create an LMS where people were able to come in and really gather all the information that they need. You don't have to dig through your email looking for that one document that got sent out 3 months ago. You don't have to worry about, oh, I lost this one page out of this book. And so with that, that was really our focus when we started in on this. So within our LMS, obviously we have our learning, we have our training modules for them to complete. This is also where we house our recipes. So they have a printed recipe book, but anytime that somebody needs quick access to a recipe, they're able to find it very quickly and be able to grab that digitally off of that. We also send out a weekly newsletter, and we archive those on the porch. So let's say that somebody said, oh, that was sent out in the newsletter 3 months ago and you started a month ago, so you never received it. You can go back all the way to the very first newsletter that we ever sent out. And that's where we house those archives so that people can continuously go back and look for those records. It's also where we keep our equipment manuals and guides. So everybody knows that you get those equipment manuals and you put them all in one place, and then you forget where that one place is. And so we house all of them here digitally for them to be able to find. And then we also do several assessments, one of which being our operations assessment that we also house within Wisetail. We use an add-on called On Track, which is basically a checklist tool that they have developed. And so that is where we complete operations assessments, both at an overarching level with our franchise area directors, but that's also where they're able to do self-assessments for operations assessments for Stereotech, things like that, so that we give our managers the tools to be able to continuously check on themselves, but then also they know where those checks are found and how to access all of that information. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, and she'll start talking a little bit about our relationship building.
Thank you. Yeah, so one way that we are going to be able to optimize our brand standards and maintain the consistency throughout all of our units is to create meaningful relationships. And this is on multiple levels. So I wanted to talk about two primary relationships and then move on to a third one in more depth and more detail. So the first one is meet Brian Henry. I know Brian is a participant on this webinar, so hi, Brian. And he approached us. He is the senior manager of inner rows for Slim Chickens. And he approached us with the idea of how can I have a place where for my team, for my training managers that are deployed to a new restaurant opening, how can they access all the materials that they need while on the road? And it's not 5 documents are in Dropbox, another one's on the P drive. We all know that there's inconsistencies on where we store all of our documentation sometimes. So we really needed to mainstream that. So one thing we were able to do was to make Brian a page administrator within our LMS platform. And he is able to own this page. He can upload content and organize it to where it's easy to find for his team. That way there's no confusion. There's no emails being sent back and forth. Nobody's relying on us to get back to them when it's really a time-sensitive issue that needs to be responded to quickly. Another one is to establish a training council. So I like to empower those that have been in the field, or for me specifically, I really enjoy working with some of the leaders in our franchise community. So that's anywhere from a team member, in-store trainer, to the VP of training of one of our franchise operations. So they could potentially give us insights into learning gaps and knowledge gaps that we didn't even know existed. That's been extremely effective in maintaining that communication with them. So before going to the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit more about one of the most beneficial relationships we've been able to establish at Slim Chickens is with the leaders of each department. So Tabitha, if you wanted to go ahead and go to the next one. So regular communication with stakeholders is very important so that we can have productive stakeholder meetings when we're approaching any kind of new learning objective. So when we're approached with a new process, are we sure that the proper people are in place? So it's highly, highly important to make sure that we have established relationships with department heads of marketing, finance, HR, technology, operations, and legal. It doesn't always mean that they're going to have a substantial part to play in whatever that new process is, but you'd be surprised as to how often they do. And I think that was our biggest challenge, if I'm being quite honest, is making sure that the training process or that training was always being brought up in those meetings where a new process or a new procedure or a new technology was being rolled out. And now I can say confidently that when anything new comes to the table with our C-suite, there is always the question of how does training fit into this? What is training's role? We need to get training involved. So it's highly important to establish those relationships. So what is the objective when meeting with stakeholders? It's important to put your individual department's goals in context of the larger organization. So the first thing that you're wanting to do is to review the organizational goals so that everybody is aligned and reminded. I know sometimes we can get off track on what our end goal is for the year. So some of your overarching strategic goals or priorities may be to enhance performance or create a winning culture, or to build stronger relationships with your franchisees. So what are the organizational goals that were determined at the beginning of the year or 5 years ago, whatever that might look like for your company? And then second, this allows you to align on that new program, what the training program outcomes should be. And then you can formulate KPIs around that training program. And this gets all of the leaders involved in that process. So it's not just us going back to our desks, to our teams, and trying to come up with KPIs on how we're going to measure the success of a new training program. This allows them a space to understand and get a glimpse into our world before we then take it back for content creation.
So one of the things, once we determine those goals, after we have those meetings, then we start really laying down the design. What is this going to look like? What do we want to be involved in this coursework? One of the things that we have found is to be able to leverage different learning styles. So I originally went to school with an education degree, and so we talked about these all day, every day, it seems like. We talked about the 4 main learning styles: visual, auditory, reading and writing, and then kinesthetic learners. So one of the things one of the goals that we really have when we're developing our processes is to be able to incorporate all of those within every module that we do. So we start off with visuals, things like PowerPoints, charts, even posters that maybe they see in the restaurants. And then we move into auditory so that we kind of start incorporating those videos. We love being able to film videos. I think that we have seen throughout our time and our development with learning that people respond very well to videos, especially when they're short 30-second, 1-minute videos that they can grab little pieces of. We then focus on recipes and quizzes when it comes to the reading and the writing portion of things. Some people I know really want to be able to just sit down and kind of read and take in that information before they dive into something. And then we try to always include interactive. So that's been a big thing for us as we've continued to develop our training program and our training styles. We like to include things like drag and drops, hotspots for people to be able to click on to create more information. And we've learned that by continuing to add in those interactives, not only do we engage our kinesthetic learners, but we're also engaging the rest of the learners because they have to interact with the platform continuously. One of the other things that we have started really digging into when we develop our training is cross-collaboration and audience identification. So we have found out that sometimes these overlap and sometimes these don't. So we like to always talk to our subject matter experts to begin with. Obviously, when it comes to us, Rachel has a background in the field, and so she's seen what's being done. But as we all know, these things continuously change, and we continue to try to improve that. So we always try to bring in those subject matter experts, our field training managers, general managers of stores, operators from different franchises. And this is where it really brings in key those relationships that Rachel talked about developing. We develop those relationships early on, and then we start to invest them in the training process. They're able to help us find the source of truth. And not only that, but to be able to find out this is how we actually operate this in a restaurant, and here's why. They're able to give us those really nitty-gritty details of what the day-to-day looks like. But what we've also found is that sometimes those subject matter experts have a little bit of a different idea than the people who are directly impacted by the training itself. So most of the time that falls onto the team members, the restaurant trainers, and the people who are in those restaurants every single day working shifts and actually utilizing the training that they're learning and putting it into application in the restaurant. So a great example of this is we like to provide schematics. So we provide schematics for how to set up a station for our team members so that when they come in, there's no question. They know exactly what it's going to look like. And so as we redesigned the schematic recently because of a menu update, we went together, we really started laying this out. After we had a baseline of this is what we want the schematic to look like, we met with those subject matter experts. And so one of the things and the collaborations that we built was to be able to set this up in the flow of the recipe. So for example, SSW is salads, sandwiches, and waffles. So when they were building a salad, we went ahead and put all of the things for the salad together, but then also laid them out in order, step by step, of how they put together that salad. Once we did that, we then took a picture of it and then sent it out to those directly impacted audience members. And I've put 2 quotes up here for you guys to be able to see what exactly they told us. So you can see one of them said, although perfect, tomatoes drip, but are a huge mess in the rush. They'll drip into the cucumbers and then they'll be stained red, which no customer ever wants. Then I had somebody else that reached out, another general manager, who said it's really nice, but the coleslaw is really messy. It gets everywhere. And when we put it in the back, it's going to cause it to drip into the front 2 containers. So once we talked about this to them, they said, we love that it's an order, but we want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that works the most effective for us. And so we rearranged that. As you can see, those tomatoes got pulled up to the front of the cabinet. The coleslaw got moved up to the front because we were able to take into account things that we don't see when we're not in the restaurant every single day in that cooler actually making those salads. And so we've learned that by doing this, we're able to kind of roll a step-by-step process out. And like I said, start off with those subject matter experts, but then go all the way down to the people that are truly invested and living out what they are seeing and what we're producing every single day in the restaurant.
Perfect. So now let's talk about some training roadmaps that we've put together. So Tabitha talked about all the different avenues and ways that we can get and convey our message on our program. So training roadmaps are going to provide the framework for our employees to follow. They know exactly what they're getting into when they approach this. So a well-defined training process is going to just ensure that our employees are not only going to receive the same foundational knowledge and skills, but that they're also going to know what they are responsible for. So if you see on this example, this is for front of house training team member. On shift 1, that yellow square shows the documents needed, and this is conveyed and communicated from the manager to the new team member. When you arrive for your training shift, these are what you need to bring onto your shift. And that is because the first 15 minutes of their shift on site will be them sitting down to get into our site. And so we're showing them and telling not only the managers at what point the team member needs to go and do their online training, but we're telling the team member and the trainer as well. So they know approximately how long it should take them to complete that training and when exactly they should be going on. Within those trainings, one thing that's really cool that we've been doing, we love, is these handoff videos at the end of each session. So it's just that it just solid, oh my goodness, words. It solidifies the fact that, okay, you've completed your online training. It's time for you to go and get with your in-store trainer to complete your on-the-job training, which you can see starts off with the shadow piece, and then they go through shift review and feedback. It's just a clear, lined out guideline for everyone to follow. So all parties involved understand where they should be, what they should be doing, and when they should be doing it. So sets expectations. It motivates the new team member to take control of their training. And if they haven't completed a step prior and the manager didn't realize it, or the trainer, they can hold them accountable as well. Provides that structure and organization, allows us to manage our time, and it reduces a lot of anxiety for those new team members.
So once we implement any of the courses that we've designed, one of the things that we always fall back into is trying to really focus into feedback loops. So obviously we all know that we need feedback. Most of us work very closely with Addy and Kirkpatrick models and being able to find a flow in that. But by receiving feedback, we also create buy-in and ownership. So when people give us feedback and then they see it, I can't tell you how many times we have gone into a restaurant and somebody has given us feedback and seen the update and is so excited to be able to tell everybody that they played a role in that. And then lastly, it allows for a triple check. So like we said earlier, if we build it into a way that makes sense for us, it may not be the most effective when it comes down to actually seeing that happen in the restaurant. So there's 5 basics of a feedback loop. We start off with ideating and design, then we test and we implement. And then once we do that, we go move into measuring and evaluation. So that's where we do the stair-step program. We typically release in phases, which I'll give you an example of in just a minute. And then we decide if we're going to pivot or are we going to preserve? Was the material great? Are there any changes that need to be made? Or do we need to completely pivot and move into a whole nother idea? And then step 5, when we feel confident about it, that's when we launch it to our system. So a perfect example of this is we did what you call a stepped wedge rollout process when we rolled out our LMS. So we switched to Wisetail probably close to 1.5 years ago, but we actually rolled it out just a little less than 1 year ago. When we did that, we were moving from one learning management system to another. So they had experience with a learning management system, but they didn't have experience with this one specifically. So we went through and did this stepped wedge rollout system to be able to continuously receive that feedback. We started off with our franchise area directors, a very small team of people that work in our support center, and we opened it up to training for them as team members. So when they were first entered into this, we did this with every single group as we rolled out. We only allowed them for the first few weeks in as a team member would see it. They had no administrative functions because we didn't want them to get bogged down in the weeds of all the new information that they were gathering, and instead wanted to really hone in on what the team member experience is going to be, since that's the vast majority of the people in our system. We gave them a 2-week period to go through the training. We walked through a meeting with them and kind of walked them through, here's how you find things. But then we gave them 2 weeks as a free-for-all in the system. And we said, go click on every button, see what happens, and give us feedback on every step of the way. Once they did that, we had some modifications, we had some updates, and then we released it to our managers. So during this time, we gave admin functions to our FADs. So they had spent that time, they learned what it was like as a team member. And then we used a train the trainer idea, because we told our FADs, okay, now you're going to help your managers. We went through a webinar with the managers and walked them through the very basics of the system, but then allowed them to contact their FADs to be able to learn where things are, ask questions about things that they've seen. And then we did another webinar for our franchise area directors and gave them admin functions so that they could start focusing now on what it looks like when you're overseeing multiple restaurants, when you're overseeing multiple people in a single location. And then once we did that, we once again gave them a couple of weeks. They went through their training. The FADs then gave us feedback on the admin side and what that looked like for them. And then our managers gave us information as far as what it was like for a team member. And then once we made those updates, we went through and we officially did our system-wide launch. So that's where we really leveraged that train the trainer model, because now the managers have gone through just like a team member. So they are now the source of knowledge. Instead of them having to completely overwhelm the FADs or possibly the training team, when we have thousands of people asking questions, they were able to go to their managers who were then able to help them and guide them through the system. The same thing with the managers, they were then able to go to the FADs to start working on those admin functions and understanding how that works and impacts them. We also released a learning page, which we still update to this day. We have a page on our, we have a page that you can click on from the very home page that says how to use the porch. We put this on the very front because, like I said, we continuously add new people to our learning management system. So when they get in, they can immediately go over to this learning page and it tells them, here's where you find some of the most important information that you need. We also have a section that's only permission to managers and people that have admin functions that walk them through step by step how to build a report, how to run a report, how to read that report, and then impact your team members. And so with all of this, we're still cycling it back to where they're able to continuously have a source of reference when they roll into our learning management system. So not only are they using it for training, but they're also able to use it as a source of truth for them to even better understand the system and what that looks like for them.
All right. And lastly, the biggest piece of it is we needed to have a clear and consistent communication stream. So we had to really sit back and look at how we were going to be able to utilize all of our tools to make this happen. So we all know that webinars and virtual meetings are great. So you can see over on the far right an example of one of our weekly newsletters that we call the DIP. In there, it shows and announces the releasing of a new video series that we recently did regarding a back to basics series on, walk-in cooler management, draining the brine from your chicken. And so we announced it in the DIP and made sure to tag the location to our LMS on where they can find those videos and walk themselves through that process. Video messages. So as well as having these available, we would also have little tag along pieces. So once it led them back to the site, any documentation was also right there relating straight to that same process and procedure. We can always utilize push notifications and email sends to remind individuals that of an upcoming promotion or upcoming training that's due. And then one thing that I love is that we have been working closely with our marketing department on making sure that any printed materials, we're tag teaming with them and getting them delivered to the restaurants. And that is an example right there of one of the pages within what we call our PIG book, our product implementation guide. And so this is our training piece of it, where they know what they're getting in that POP kit. If it doesn't arrive, they know exactly what they need to reach out to us and request that we get to them. So a lot of just constant communication, constant feedback in order to, build upon the trainings that we're providing to our field. And that's it. Any questions? We're going to open it up now to the Q&A section.
So we do have one that was sent in about what sort of checklist do we use within OnTrack. The checklist that today that we are using, we're actually using two, but we're using them in a couple different ways. So one is we are using our operations assessment that our franchise area directors execute in restaurants in the system. But we also have that available for managers to do ops assessments on their own locations as well. The reason we put that in OnTrack was prior to that, it was really a paper-based Excel sort of spreadsheet, but it was hard to track and hard to get real detailed with it in some regards. So the way that we're using it today is with the ability of OnTrack. If something's missed in the store, something needs to be fixed or corrected, we actually have the ability to tag certain managers within the restaurant and assign them duties and tasks through that platform of OnTrack. But hopefully, because it's all housed in one spot, we can also start correlating some data to understand ops scores, ops assessment scores with training completion scores as well. So it's a fantastic thing for us, but also it helps create that one-stop shop. So there's only one place to go. We've actually also just now implemented, we use Stereotech from our food safety audits. There is a self-audit on the Stereotech website. However, we've created that within our platform as well, again, just to create that one-stop shop for operators for ease of use. Let's see. Sorry, questions come in. Thank you. Do you offer ongoing development plans, IDPs for team members? Currently, no, we do not. That would be really at the discretion of the franchisee or a general manager if they create that program. Today, we don't have that. We may have that within our team, but not necessarily for team members within the restaurant. Not yet. Not today. We have thoughts around that though. Can the LMS handle both classroom as well as online? Yes, actually it can. We do have the ability to host webinars just like this through the platform itself. So attendees would log into the platform, sign up, and have that scheduled, and then it can go straight through the platform as well. So yeah, it's actually a great tool that Wisetail has available for us. So. Yeah, when you rolled out integration, what were some of the major challenges you encountered when transitioning from your previous LMS? Yeah, so we did have a previous LMS prior to this, so I'll really kind of open this to Tabitha and Rachel because it was a lengthy process. From my point of view, I would say be patient because I'm not very patient in general, and I want to go pretty quick and knock out a lot of things, and that is not very possible all the time when you go that route. But I'll open it up for them and they can help answer that as well.
Yeah, so thanks, Chris. I'll hit on that a little bit. Before I hit on that, I do want to say when you talk about online and in-person training and how to integrate that, one of the nice things is not only can we have webinars, but people register for that through there, but then that can also be available to them later, not only where the recording is, but we can also track attendance, whether it's in person or virtual. And then on top of that, that's where we can dump those resources so they can remember, hey, I remember there was this webinar, they shared some resources in it. We can also dump that into that page so that they can go back and refer to it. And it's all fairly organized and put together. As far as rolling out, it's kind of we'll start with the major challenges and then I'll talk about the wins. So I think the major challenge for us, number one, is just that we have a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different understanding levels. We have some people who have worked with 5 and 6 different learning management systems with different companies. And then we have some people who have never worked with a learning management system. And so I think for us, one of the biggest challenges was really just figuring out the best way to help them and how to give them small tidbits of information rather than overwhelming them. It was very overwhelming even for us in the beginning to roll that out. And so making sure that we didn't overwhelm our system. And I think that's where a lot of those pieces came in of like building step-by-step guides and things like that so that they were able to do it a little bit easier at their own pace. The major wins, I would definitely say, honestly, for us was the branding of it. One of the things that we really took into account while we did this was that we wanted our learning management system to be this almost a brand in itself, where people saw it and they realized that, oh, this is where I go. We wanted it to be something fun to get into. And so being able to really own that design from start to finish, I think was a huge win for us. And I think now that you hear a lot of that, I even hear people that'll say, oh, that looks like something that would go on the porch, which is what we refer to our learning management system.
I would like to add one thing to that. Very well said, Tabitha, but I think the largest challenge for me was that we also had we did a integration with our HR platform and really understanding all the nuances that come along with that and the potential challenges. It was really beneficial for us in the end, but it took a lot of brain power, a lot of sitting down and really discussing, if this team member is listed as cook, what does this unlock in the porch with what we call our LMS platform? So what does this unlock for them? What learnings, what documents can they see? Do they see it all? So we really had to dive deep into mapping out what that journey looks like within the platform for each level, for each team member, managers, and above restaurant leaders as well.
Okay, great. Tabitha, I'll let you answer this. Do the push notifications have read receipts? I don't know the actual answer to that. I'm actually reading that question going, man, that's a good question. I don't know the answer, Tabitha.
So the short answer to that is no, although that will be added to a bucket of list of suggestions that we like to make to Wisetail, because I have never thought about that. I will say that while they don't have read receipts, there is a report that you can pull to find out if an email was delivered to an email account or if it was blocked. And then Wisetail can always go through and walk you through if it was blocked, figuring out how to undo that process to make sure that they're continuously receiving those emails.
Thank you. And yes, Jamie, that will get added to a list of things for us. How does your LMS training system track and measure the progress of learners? What kind of analytics reporting? Yeah, so I mean, Tabitha or Rachel can jump in on this too, but it does track everybody throughout the process. And I think there's a question here too about how do you determine who has administrative rights and things like that. And Rachel alluded to this. have a data feed with our HR platform. So as you hire a new team member within the platform and you set them up as a cashier, when they flow into our LMS, they only receive orientation and cashier training. So they're not seeing the whole world. They're only seeing the positions that they're permissioned to at the time. And then as a manager now says, hey, I want to schedule Steve from cashier to a cook, they open that up and then it flows again within the platform and it opens up the cook training for them. So from that standpoint, it's very hierarchical driven, but it's also the same for a franchisee, right? They would have admin access to their group or their independent locations. But from a reporting standpoint, yes, you have all of that reporting. So if there's 5 modules within a course, then you would know, hey, Steve took 2 of these, but he still hasn't completed these other 3. So if you want to add anything to that.
I mean, I think you covered it pretty well, Chris. It's definitely, it's as granular as you want it to be. And that's something that we've even talked a lot with our operators about is you can get into the nitty gritty of this individual has completed these exact modules, but then you can also see it from a very high level view and just say, oh, well, the entire system as a whole is, 90% completed on all of the training that's permissioned out to them.
Tabitha, if you want to talk about this, the question is about feedback. Is that something you do through the LMS? Do you receive feedback post initial creation or throughout? So that's a good question.
Absolutely. So, so we do a little bit of both. We leverage feedback through a variety of different methods. So, for example, that schematic had not been released yet, so we did not go through the LMS for that. We sent it out to a select few number of people, and I actually did that via text message. I have also done it through gathering emails, but then yes, when we do large feedbacks, we do like to house it in our LMS. We have done things as much as simple as just creating a Google form and embedding it at the bottom of a training module, all the way to opening up comments on training modules. So we get very much continuous feedback through that piece especially. One of the things that we really like to do is we like to allow comments at the end of a training module, and you'll get things as simple as, hey, I completed it, I'm so glad I'm done with training, all the way up to, hey, this one specific question was really confusing and I saw it 6 different times. And so one of the things that we do is we like to constantly check that. We even have a dashboard on the backside, and there's a widget that is enabled through Wisetail that shows you the most recent comments. And so every time you go to your admin side, that's one of the dashboard widgets that I have pinned to the top, so that I'm constantly every day just kind of going through and looking to see what those new comments are, to see if any of them are things that raise concerns or maybe ideas that we want to start implementing, whether it's with that module or modules in the future.
Yeah, and Audrey, I would tell you, the feedback's important, right? But if you're going to open that door, you better buckle up, because right, everything is our baby, and we don't like people to tell us our baby's ugly, right? So sometimes it's tough skin to get through some of that feedback, but yeah, it's great. How do you follow up and hold leaders accountable for completing required training? So we do this with really kind of a partnership with our operations team. One, we have an operations scorecard that is a quarterly scorecard. They're scored on numerous metrics: S&G, overall satisfaction, guest complaints, did they send trainers on the road, training completion, things like that. So because training completion is one of the metrics that they are scored on, most franchisees want a feather in their cap, and they want to feel prideful, and they want to win awards, right? And so that's one of the ways that they do that. But also, as we do LTO promotions or things like that, there's a weekly thing that we do with our franchise area directors, where we just put it right in front of them. Hey, here's where all the restaurants are, or here's where the groups are with their training completion, so they can help drive completion through that. So how are newsletters distributed? That's great. Are you able to see who reads them? Yeah, so the newsletter went out today. We use Constant Contact as a vendor for that. We build our newsletter within that platform. It gets sent out via email. We do have the ability to see who opens it. So we have the emails of the individuals that open it. We can also see how many times things were clicked on within the newsletter. We can't necessarily get granular to see what was clicked on, but we can see there's a percentage of that, right? And then we also have a feature set up with that where if they don't open it on Wednesday, they get another email on Saturday with the same newsletter. So they get to do that. But then what Tabitha and Rachel talked about, we do house those historically on the porch, our LMS, and just becomes a repository for all that information as well.
I would like to add to that. Sorry for the echo. So just adding on to what Chris was saying about the newsletters, once they are stored and archived on the porch, one thing that Tabitha has been really great about is creating these awesome image widgets that highlight the overarching topics within each of those newsletters. So not the individual doesn't have to click into each of those newsletters in order to see what that content is and have to search through what they're trying to find the information on. So that information is right there on that image widget when they go to that newsletter page.
And the follow-up to that was, yes, you can create the module directly within the platform as well. Yes. Thank you. It does. It's another awesome tool. Another way to get that in the hands of people.
So I will speak on why we chose not to do that initially, just because we have so many of our locations that really need the information delivered to the stores on those days. And as soon as they receive them, a lot of times they print out that information on their store computers. And while they have access to the porch, we also wanted to make sure that we were sending the same message in multiple avenues.
How do you determine who has admin? Again, that really goes with our data feed and just kind of how we set folks up. From an actual administrative, it's really these three people you see on the call, but it's based on hierarchy, what permissions they get to see. So that was part of the data feed challenge on the front end of this as we started designing it and trying to figure out how we build the best platform.
And I'll add to that just a little bit in that when we do this, when we actually kind of went through and designed those admin permissions, it's very much a stair-stepped program. Everything is customizable as far as what permissions they are allowed to do, all the way down to individual tasks as to whether they're allowed to complete those or not. And so overarching, you've got Chris, myself, and Rachel that are super admins. We can do literally anything in the system, but then we have roles broken down, like Chris said, based on what their title is through that data feed. So obviously an assistant general manager has less permissions than a general manager, who has less permissions than someone that's like a franchisee.
And then I want to elaborate on that as well. Back to those page administrators, you can assign a page and that person has essentially admin access within their own little world within our platform. So we're not concerned about them getting outside of that page and disrupting other items. But that's an option as well.
Okay. How does Slim Chicken's training team stay updated and relevant in terms of training content and approaches? Are there strategies you employ to stay ahead of the curve? Yeah. So, man, well, first of all, if you're a member of Chart, I think that's a fantastic way to do that. That's a fantastic resource. And I say that, right? Just the coming together of minds, right? And just having this group is a part of that. But I would also say that, man, I read a lot. So, what are you reading? What are you looking at? Look outside of this industry, right? We don't have all the answers. And to some degree, we're behind the curve in a lot of things. And that's not a knock on the industry. It's just, we just are, right? So what are other companies outside of our industry doing? What are you looking at? I have a stack of Harvard Business Review and Fast Company and Inc. sitting on my desk. And, I don't read every article, right? But I look at the design aspects or the training aspects or the teaching aspects. Are you looking at LinkedIn to seeing what other companies are doing? I would also say that, if you have the right partners with different things, are they putting on workshops and conferences and things like that to where you can share and see what other folks are doing? I would also add, this is kind of maybe interesting, but I have 3 kids, and they live in a different world than I grew up in. And so for me, it's, well, what technologies are they utilizing? And then I look at that and go, okay, well, how do we do that? Because ultimately our end user are my kids' ages, right? So they're the ones that are team members in our restaurants today. They're the ones that are becoming managers for us. And so it's about creating material, training, tools, resources, whatever, in their language and in the way that they want to absorb that information. So I think that would be my biggest thing. And I would also say, don't say no, right? I mean, the ideation process for us, I think, is important. And, sometimes it's easy to go, well, that won't work, or we don't have the ability to do that. But you need to be willing to break down a wall and do something a little different, or try something that's not the norm, because things have moved so quickly, right? So you have to be open and willing to do that. I just actually had a conversation with somebody about video, and 3 years ago, a video was like 3 minutes or less was kind of the sweet spot. Yet today, if you're over 60 seconds, you're done, right? So you have to constantly evolve and understand that aspect of what we do. So there is a question on the side. Sorry, Aaron, I was trying to type a response to you, but yes, there's a search feature within the platform that's actually really good. So yeah, you can search that information within there, Aaron. You can search, if we searched waffle, it would pull up every document, every recipe, whatever that has anything to do with waffles. So yeah, you can definitely do that within the platform. It's great. Hopefully I answered some of that with how are you keeping your training relevant and achievable for this new generation of learners? I think that's, hopefully I answered that, right? I think that's a part of it. With all the LMS systems out there, what was it about Wisetail that made you want to partner with them? Yeah, so again, I'll go back to chart, right? If you've been to a chart conference, you go to the resource gallery and everybody gives prizes away and all that fun stuff. I've actually never won a prize from Wisetail, so that's interesting. But they're always there, and I felt that they were always either at where we needed to be or ahead of where we needed to be. And I don't feel that all LMS platforms are there. I feel like they're a little behind. And so I wanted a partner that was relevant at the time, but at the same time that was able to take the feedback and help with the learnings to help us get better and to help their platform get better. So to me, it's the vendor relationship, right? And do you have a solid vendor relationship where you can do that? And they have a timetable of how they roll products out, right? And in a past life, it was, well, we'll do that, but it's on a 2-year plan. And well, 2 years, that's out of date. So that was one of the main reasons for us to make the switch to Wisetail. And we did talk to users. So do you author and deliver content in languages other than English? I'll give you a couple answers to that. Yes, we do. As far as written content, all of our job aids in the back of house are English and Spanish. We are in the process right now of having our recipe book translated into Spanish as well. We have videos that are in English and Spanish, but we have currently not transferred our coursework into Spanish. But yesterday we had a very good conversation with some other Wisetail folks and learned some AI technologies that might be able to help us move quicker in that. So, but today we don't have that in Spanish. So let's see, I'll make sure I get everything. Team members access the porch. Yeah, Maryland laptop store, they can get on their phone. We don't lock our platform down, but you do have the ability to lock down IP addresses, so they can only do training if they're within the 4 walls of your building. So if they left, they couldn't access it. You do have that ability. We just haven't done that yet. How much information on average do you put into 1 day of training? Yeah, Tabitha, I think this is a good question for you. I mean, look, we're all in the same boat, right? We're in restaurants, and when people clock in, it's go time, right? Because we're scheduling them for when we need them. So for us, it's the micro learning aspect of how do we get very short and sweet, but succinct at the same time to where they're getting all the information they need. So, Tabitha, I can let you expand on that.
Yeah, so Rachel, and she kind of showed it in that little picture that she had of how it lays out. Typically we try to keep, and this is positional training, so this is the start off. So there's really two pieces as far as how much information we give them. When they're starting off and they're in their positional training, they're brand new, they know nothing about Slim Chickens. They're spending 15-20 minutes, which seems like a lot in the beginning, but we're talking over the course of maybe 3 or 4 days. One of the things that we specifically did when we started this was we did not call these sections day 1, day 2, day 3. And we did that because we have people who obviously learn in different ways. We have some people who want to go through everything on day 1. They want to gather as much information as they can, and then they want to see it in action. And then there are people that are a little more like me that want to take it in small bite-sized pieces, go do that piece, and then let's move on to the next. And so that was one of the things that we did. Now, as far as a day-to-day, once they're officially trained, they've been through that positional training. Most of the training that we're giving them, for example, for LTOs, we just launched a course this week. It will take them 10 minutes absolute maximum to complete. Most people average closer to 5 to 7 minutes. And so we try to keep those much shorter because we know that this is a reoccurring thing, and we know that our restaurants we're taking time away from them being able to actually work in the restaurant to learn this new item. And so we try to keep those in a much smaller, more succinct fashion.
Great. So do you house all your company documents in Wisetail? Yes, we do. Very specifically to operations and training, all of our documentation is housed within there. It's all searchable, very easy to find. And we have started, again, Rachel talked about Brian Henry from an NRO perspective. He's starting to house documents within his specified section as well. So it's catching on more from a brand standpoint within our company, where more folks can utilize that to house documentation. So yeah, absolutely. I'll in the chat box, Kelly, thank you. Yeah, SmartCat is a great AI translation platform. Yeah, that just I don't know if we have that on our list or not, but I feel like we have an ongoing list of AI tools that we're trying to figure out, what the best resource is. So thank you for that. How is the support from Wisetail outside of integration? For us, it's been great. I would say that regardless of who your partner is, I think a key thing to look at or to do is to challenge them, not aggressively, but to challenge them. Can something be done? How do we do this? And to ask questions, because we're not the only partner that Wisetail has. They have a lot of partners. So what are other concepts doing? What are other brands using, and how are they resolving this issue? So that's been great for us. I mean, we have standing calls with Wisetail on an ongoing basis. So yeah. And yeah, there's Audrey, thank you. Yeah, they often answer in seconds. Yeah, so that they do. I think we would agree with that statement. Do you have connectivity issues in your restaurants? How does Wisetail work around that? I don't know that we've really had that. I'm looking at Rachel over here. I don't know that we've had that. Tabitha, do you know of any issues of that?
Yeah, so we have had issues with that. And it just depends on really where the restaurant is. We have some restaurants that have much better connectivity than others. One of the things that we've done that Wisetail has really helped us kind of collaborate with is being able to know how large our images are that we're embedding in that, making things very similar to if you're used to any kind of like HTML website creating, trying to do that in a way that there are small files so that they can load very quickly. One of the other things that we do with that is we like to embed a lot of content so that it's not having to be loaded by Wisetail. It's being housed somewhere else and just kicked back into the site. And a lot of times that helps with the connectivity issues that we see.
Tabitha, I'll give you this one too. Is OnTrack embedded in Wisetail, or is it an outside platform?
Yeah, so OnTrack is embedded into Wisetail. Wisetail actually owns OnTrack. And so it's an add-on to your already basically current LMS. And then they just give you a button and say, here's the link to get to yours. And they'll add it on the backside. So the great part about that is when you edit it, you're actually still in the LMS. You go to your admin side and there's one tab that's specifically for OnTrack. But everything is housed within the platform, which also makes everything very linkable within that. And recently, not super long ago, they released an app that's specifically for OnTrack, so that when people are completing checklists, this also helped a lot going back to those connectivity issues. Instead of pulling it up on a browser and then going through several pages, there's now an app strictly for OnTrack, so that when they're in there every single day, they can, one, complete it on a mobile device very quickly, and two, have very quick speeds, even with low connectivity rates.
Thank you, Tabitha. So how do you keep timetables with compliance items like harassment, food safety, things like that? Well, I don't give me some more, Audrey. So if you're asking specifically, like, how do we manage that? So, OnTrack provides us with different checklists, right? So incident reports, things like that. We do have open mid-closing checklist, a line check form that, is executed multiple times a day. That is not done within our platform today. That's in our back office system, but I envision at some point that will change and move into the deal. But we also have the ability, so we have the ability to reset coursework, or hey, it's time to redo whatever. So we can create that if we want, and we can create required courses and put due dates on it so that, hey, they have to do it within this week or this month or whatever it may be. And I mean, I know you're saying 15-20 minutes of training per shift. I mean, if we just built that into that piece, then yes, we could do that. But typically from a food safety standpoint, especially from a team member, it's really kind of positional based, where there's just an overall overarching food safety piece. From a managerial standpoint, we do serve safe. So, I mean, we support the National Restaurant Association. Amen. But yeah, that's what that is. Have you had any issues where team members struggle to get on their own lack of knowledge or tech getting on a website? If so, what's been your solution? Yeah, I think there's some people that would answer that. Rachel, Tabitha.
Yeah, so I think this goes, I'm looking at the chat as well, and this kind of ties into Danny's question with, do we require all learners to have email addresses, and did that provide hurdles? So this was a challenge, but yes, we do require that everybody has an email address, and that's what one of the stipulations is within our integration. So we had to, look to our franchise area directors and to the operations team heavily to assist us in getting the correct information fields filled out within our HR platforms, to ensure that each user was then being pulled into Wisetail for us. So it did definitely present us with some struggles, and we had plenty of team members and managers reaching out to us and saying that they were struggling getting on. It's a learning curve, and I think what Tabitha, myself, and Chris did really well is we took that head on, and we put together a little infographic, posted it everywhere that we through all channels, and really made that available for everybody to understand.
All right, well, cool. Thank you for the questions. That's a lot of questions, so thank you. We appreciate that.
I want to thank everyone for being here today. The Q&A is always just so much fun because this is such an engaged community. Connect with Chris, Tabitha, Rachel, or Wisetail outside of this webinar, and we really enjoyed our time with you guys today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.